Hi, this is Kelcy Bremer, and this is my presentation on special education interviews. First, when I interviewed the three individuals, we discussed our child find procedures for our building. Um, the paraprofessional that I spoke with, her knowledge was really just of the pre-K screening that we hold every year, that's free for um, all, all children birth to age 4 to attend. Those 4-year-olds are then placed into our um, at-risk preschool program based on qualification, and our birth to 3-year-olds can be identified for needing services at that time. Um, the para also spoke about teacher recommendations that are made just based on classroom needs and the process that teachers go through to recommend students for evaluation. The special education teacher also spoke of the pre-K screening and how we identify students as both at risk and needing services. Our speech and language um, teachers are there to do that screening. We do cognitive and motor screening. We have our school nurse provide hearing and vision screening, and all of that determines what services a child might need and if they qualify for our at-risk program. We also screen all students coming into kindergarten. Many of them do attend our pre-K program, so just those students who are not in our pre-K program that are moving into kindergarten are screened. We have a Parents as Teachers task force that provides services and is very involved, especially in terms of working with families who have been referred by a doctor or our health clinic in town. And then she also talked about she can make recommendations for services of younger siblings based on observing their needs while they're in the building for an older sibling who attends here. My building administrator, I think that one of the significant things was that she didn't describe this pre-K screening as just for pre-K. She called it our early childhood screening, which is more accurate. We do open it up for all children birth to age 4, and those younger students are able to qualify for services either inside or outside of school. An example that we discussed when I was interviewing my administrator was of my own nephew who attended the early childhood screening as a 2-year-old, and there were some significant speech concerns, and so they were referred on to get additional screening in that area, and he has since been diagnosed with speech apraxia and receives services at through the speech therapist at the local hospital, but also through early childhood special ed and our speech pathologist in the building. My administrator also spoke about the referrals that we receive from other professionals. It seems to be increasing, in her opinion, that we are getting doctors who are referring students back to us either for modifications and accommodations that they need to have in place on their IEP or for 504 plans. My administrator spoke about the Early Childhood Task Force, which is our Parents as Teachers group, and how active they are in helping us locate students or children who may need additional services. And then our nurse and our special education coordinator at the beginning of each school year go through the medical records that are provided to our nurse at enrollment, and they flag students or create a list of students who may have medical needs that would either qualify them for special education services or a 504 plan. As far as the most challenging parts of each of their jobs, my paraprofessionals really spoke about dealing with student restraint when a student escalates, whether they need to be removed from the classroom physically, or um, they are trying to hurt themselves or someone else. All of our paras and special education teachers and administrators are trained in restraint each year, but that is something that my para spoke about being emotionally draining and one of the more stressful parts of her job when it comes to the point that she has to restrain or help restrain a student. My special education teacher really talked about the frustration that she experiences when she sees um, how their home life is affecting them. And she kind of talked about the yo yo of those behaviors going up and down throughout the school year. And we can feel like we're making a lot of progress with a student, either academically or socially. And then some type of trauma will occur at home, and we experience a setback with those kiddos. So she just talks about that frustration and knowing that we can only control what students are experiencing at school, and what's happening at home is often out of our control. And then my administrator um, didn't really talk about a challenge exactly. It was more that her focus is to ensure that there doesn't become a division between our special education and our general education teachers and students. She's very proud of how we work together. We don't single students out as special education. They're an equal part of the classroom, and our special education teachers are involved in our grade level team meetings, all of our professional development. And her concern is that this could very easily be the other way around, because our special education team, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, our coordinator, they're all provided to our building through a special education co-op in another town. They're not on the district pay scale. They're not, their pay doesn't come from the district. And so it would be easy to view them as not people that are part of our building, even though they're housed in our building. So she just really wants to ensure that we continue to work as a team, and that a division doesn't ever occur, making them seem or feel like they're not an equal part of our building. As far as the most rewarding parts of their jobs, my paraprofessional talked about just the love and concern that she feels for students that she works with. She finds it rewarding that at the end of the day, she knows that students are safe and loved, and that they feel safe and loved when they leave. And she knows that her coworkers, both the other paras that she works with and the special education teacher that she works for, as well as the classroom teachers that she's working with daily, that they're all here for the same reason, and that's to do what's best for kids and love them and support them. And so she just feels confident at the end of the day that she is doing something that makes a difference. My special education teacher says that the gains that students make are what's most rewarding for her. She talked about the goals that she sets on student IEPs, and the progress monitoring that takes place to ensure that her kiddos are getting where they need to be. And when a classroom teacher and herself and the paras are all on board and working together, and we see that pay off with students where they're being successful in the classroom and keeping up with their peers or closing the gap, that's what's most rewarding for her. And along those same lines, she also talked about when parents and students have pride in those gains and they can see how much their child has accomplished, and that the confidence that that creates both for the student and their parents, but also for the teachers that are involved, knowing that they're doing the right thing and taking the right steps to get the child where they need to be. My administrator talked about the confidence that she has in knowing that her staff is providing the opportunities that students need to make those gains, and then seeing those all of that hard work pay off when a student who struggles academically or socially makes the gains that we've worked really hard for. When we have those grade level meetings or when we have an IEP or a child is up for a reevaluation and we can say that they're ready for new goals and they met the goals that we set and we're looking at their data. Um, in those cases where we get to dismiss a student from special education services because they are successful and are working on grade level and no longer need additional support, that's what she finds most rewarding. As far as advice on supervision, um, my paraprofessional said that most important is to always put the student first, to make sure that we're doing what's best for students, and that that drives all of our decisions. That it's important to always be professional when working with paraprofessionals and the special ed team and the students. We may not always agree, but it's important to work together and just keep in mind that we're all here for the same reason. The special education teacher really focused on the collaboration time that we have together. We have weekly grade level PLCs that our special education teacher is involved in, um, and then the follow up that occurs weekly so that we can communicate regularly and problem solve together. That time that we use each week, just to stay on top of things and make sure that the modifications and accommodations are in place. If there's any strategies that we need to change, that's what she's really um, focused on as far as the supervision that's needed when working with the team. And then my administrator was also along those same lines. She talked about collaborating at all levels, that it's not just the SpEd teacher making all of the decisions for an identified student when it comes to writing their IEP, that the SpEd coordinator who is in and out of the building is knowledgeable of what's being done for all students, that classroom teachers know what's on the IEP, work closely with the SpEd teachers, have clear expectations, and work well with the paraprofessionals in their classrooms. She really described this as a team effort, and that you are, as a building leader, um, responsible for encouraging that and supervising that the model works that way. For working with parents of special needs children, my paraprofessional talked about the importance of her job position, understanding confidentiality, especially in our small town. And some of our paras have jobs outside of school that they also do. And it's easy to run into parents at the store or at a ball game or around town and not sharing information in settings like that, making sure that you're not talking about other students, even if it's just that you're out to dinner, because in our small town, you could very easily be overheard and be sharing information that shouldn't be shared. And I think that her concern is that this is an area that we need to continue to monitor and remind our paras of, that what happens at school stays at school. And her belief is that um, typically it's the responsibility of the classroom teacher or the special education teacher to communicate with parents and share the information that parents should be informed of. She did talk about, in some situations, she has been asked to sit in on an IEP for students that she works closely with so that she can provide information as to what her level of support is and what that support looks like, so that they can continue to keep those in place as they do a reevaluation and set new goals and modifications and accommodations. The special education teacher really just focused on the communication that we should have with parents of special children with special needs, whether that's through emailing, texting, or calling. It should always be a positive um, relationship, and you have to really work. She talked about how sometimes parents of students with special needs can be um, very protective of their children because of their disability um, or disorder, and sometimes that comes off as defensive, and they don't always believe that a teacher has their child's best interest in mind. And so, building that relationship and ensuring that parents know that we're here to support their child and help their child be as successful as possible, just really nurturing that relationship through positive communication and consistent communication was key. And then my administrator talked about being part of the IEP team and her requirements to attend and take notes and communicate with parents at that time, and then collaborate with the team to help make decisions that are best with students so that the parents also know that she is involved and on their side and their child's side. For working with classroom teachers, my paraprofessional spoke about being assigned to the students based on IEP needs, and that oftentimes she experiences very sudden changes in her schedule when a new student comes in or a new student is identified, and that takes some time to learn the expectations of the new classroom or the new teacher that she's working with. She talked about the nuances that she experiences from one class to the next, and how one teacher wants her to support or interact with students versus the next classroom that she goes to, and that she thought it was important that paras and teachers and the special education teacher and administration knew that paras are figuring that out as they go from classroom to classroom, and when their schedule does change, that adjustment time is needed to figure out what's expected of them in each setting. The teacher talked to, or the special education teacher talked about the work we do at the beginning of the school year. We have a day in August where we look at IEPs. It's called our IEP at a glance time. And before students come back to school, once class lists are set, our special education coordinator and our special education teachers work together, and they have a format in which they provide IEPs at a glance, so that teachers don't have to read the entire IEP for every student they're working with, but know what kind of services and supports they get, the minutes that involves, what if it's in class or out of class support. And she finds that time with classroom teachers really valuable. And again, she spoke about our weekly PLC time, where she works with grade level teams and gets to collaborate with teachers and check in on student needs and progress at that time. My administrator also spoke about weekly PLC time, um, the importance of having grade level teams that include the special education teacher. These meetings also include our interventionists who provide tier 2 and tier 3 support for our students. Our administrator is in on that, and then any others as needed, such as our behavior interventionist. Speech can oftentimes be involved in that. Our counselor can sit in on those if we have specific needs for students. Um, and then just the importance of communication and collaboration when working with classroom teachers to make sure that we're all doing what is needed to meet the needs of our students, and providing in-class support as needed. The advice that each of these individuals gave for first year administrator, my paraprofessional first encouraged me to always keep it in my mind to be patient. It's easy to become frustrated and to feel stressed, but know that these students receive services and support for a reason, and we always need to take a step back, take a breath, and remain calm and caring and supportive and be patient with them. She feels that it's important for administration to know how to get on the student's level and communicate with them appropriately. She talked about the difference between communicating with a kindergartner with special needs versus a sixth grader with special needs, um, and 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 just a general ed kindergartner versus a sixth grader, and just knowing how to speak to kids and reason with kids, and make an impact just by how you approach them. The special education teacher talked about the importance of knowing the students and the teachers and their needs, just not being removed from the situation. She talked about in her position and her knowledge of what administrators deal with and how paperwork can become overwhelming and meetings get you out of the building and away from students and staff, but remembering that we didn't get into this for the paperwork or the meetings. We're here for the kids. And she often finds herself having to reset and make it a priority to get back into the classroom, because otherwise she starts to experience burnout. And as an administrator, that's something that I really want to focus on in the future is just staying connected to kids. Because if I'm not here for the kids, then I probably shouldn't be here. And then my administrator talked about always making decisions based on what's best for kids, not what's best for the teacher or the parents, but that every decision should be driven by what best fits the child's needs. And to remember that when an ugly conversation occurs, when parents disagree with a decision that you have made, or when you disagree with something the parents have said or a request that they make, to remember that they are passionate about their kids, and it's not a personal attack. They're just trying to do what's best, what they believe is best, and we're trying to do what we believe is best. For the description of roles, my paraprofessional talked about being a professional at all times, not having a negative impact in the building with students or other staff, and how influential the position is of all students and staff, and the importance of just being a caring individual. My special education teacher talked about the need to have support from administration when a special education teacher makes a decision. She wants to be backed up by administration. She wants to be able to go to administration for new ideas when she's struggling with meeting the needs of a student, and she needs the administration to be knowledgeable of students, individual students and their needs, and when they can provide helpful collaborative information at meetings and be involved in the decision-making process. And again, my administrator focused on just being a collaborative team, working together to support each other and having constant open communication so that no one person on the team feels left in the dark or unheard or unsupported. The desired characteristics for aspiring administrators that each individual listed, my paraprofessional said that it's important to always do the right thing and not cut corners, to be upfront and honest, and to go the extra mile for students and staff. My special education teacher believes that a future administrator needs to be knowledgeable, again, of individual students and their needs, to be supportive of the decision-making process for special education students, to be innovative and help contribute new ideas and strategies that will best fit the needs of kids, and to be compassionate and remember that we're here for the kids. My administrator said that a good administrator should be willing to collaborate with the whole team and should be good at communicating so that everyone is involved the whole time. An administrator needs to think outside the box. She talked about the difficulty of creating the master schedule and how that impacts what the special education teacher has to do to create a schedule for her paras and the services and supports that students get in and out of the classroom. And working together to create those schedules is necessary, and that an administrator needs to be flexible and be able to think on the spot, and that your day never really goes as planned, and your to-do list might not get checked off, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't a productive day and you didn't do what was needed in your building and for your students and staff. When I think about the difference of each level of response, I noticed that my administrator's answers all focused around this team approach that we have. We have our weekly team meetings where all people are pulled in. She doesn't want a separation between general education and special education. She wants us to all be accountable in the decision-making process. So all of her answers really focused on just this team approach of working together. My special education teacher focused on more of the support that she is seeking from an administrator, and just the importance of staying connected and being involved and really knowing the students in your building and why we're doing the things we're doing for them, so that you're a valuable member of the team. And then my paraprofessional, she really talked about the importance of patience and caring for students, and it was more of an individual approach for her. She was looking at the students as an individual and the relationship that you need to have with them, and how you're perceived as a person, what your character is. I think that they each bring a valuable mindset to this conversation and to these questions. The para that I interviewed is someone who has worked in my room the last couple of years and is a very patient individual, but can also help ensure that students are meeting expectations and can hold students accountable even in kindergarten. The special education teacher that I interviewed works with younger students and has been in the building for several years, and is a really positive influence on the paras that work under her, the classroom teachers that she works with, and the students that she services. And then the administrator that I interviewed was my building administrator, and I really wanted to see what her involvement with our special education program looked like. And in her responses, I can see that She doesn't think that it all should just fall on the special education teacher or on our special education coordinator, but that all of us are equally involved in doing what's best for students. Thank you.